So I've played Elden Ring, and I feel kind of conflicted about that fact. On the one hand, it seems like it's going to be a fucking amazing game, and I loved every single moment of it. On the other hand, I feel guilty for being so lucky as to be chosen for the network test, while so many others that might love FromSoftware just as much as I do haven't had the chance to play it. I'm not really sure who this video is for. I'm not a fan of hype.
By the way, if anyone here is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself.
And I always resent how journalists get early access to games and are covering and reviewing them before the general public can even play them, in a usually very successful attempt to monetize that hype by drawing readers and viewers to their site and videos, especially when they fail to mention that a game is completely broken before launch. The Elden Ring closed network test being public makes things a lot better, but even as someone who got to play the game, I was pretty sick of how flooded my YouTube recommendations were that weekend, as everyone in existence rushed out videos to squeeze every view they possibly could out of the Elden Ring hype while it lasted, and now I'm painfully aware that I'm one of them. On the other hand, I try to be as genuine as I can on this channel while I discuss my experiences, and the Elden Ring network test was one of the most exciting, happy and amazing things I've done in a long time. Not to say games I've played recently are bad, I just loved it that much. It was so good, I just feel like I need to talk about it. If I had to choose a target audience for this video, I'd say it's someone who played the network test and wants to hear my opinion on it, or someone who hasn't but really doesn't care about spoilers of gameplay or anything like that. I'm not going to stop you from watching it if you want to, but just know how important it is to me that you know I'm not just trying to make this for views, and I really care about the sexy piece of art that is probably going to be Elden Ring. So now you've absolved me of my sins, give me my sin again, and let me talk about this fucking excellent demo. If you want the short rundown, Elden Ring is Dark Souls 4 with different lore. And by that I mean, from what I played, it seems like they've improved on the playability, gameplay, features, and multiplayer from Dark Souls 3 in the same way 3 did for 1. It's not really like Sekiro or Bloodborne at all, and it doesn't seem to make any drastic changes to the gameplay like those games did either. Weapon arts are back in a big way, and they are mostly swappable between weapons whilst also counting as infusions, and that feels like a really brilliant move. It basically means as long as you meet the stat requirements, you can swap between infusions on the fly to suit your playstyle or build. Really though, it's a new Miyazaki FromSoft game, and their dedication to improving on their own formula of controlled and deliberate gameplay makes Elden Ring seem like it could be their best game yet. I'll be the first to admit that I've been repressing my own excitement for this game, and yet the moment I booted it up and started playing, all the built-up adrenaline burst forth, and I was shouting at the TV and giggling and laughing maniacally before I'd even fought an enemy. Playing Elden Ring was really like wearing an old comfortable pair of shoes that have been lovingly restored by a master cobbler. The controller felt like smooth butter in my hands, and my fingers got back to their familiar claw grip position they've been moulded in through hours of PvP and dying to Lady Frida. I could only describe it as like playing a dream. I'm not sure about anyone else, but my memory for recalling FromSoftware levels is almost perfect. Even in games like Sekiro where I've only played them once and I haven't done any PvP, it feels like the amount of time I spend there dying makes it so every single enemy placement is ingrained in my brain. So I've had plenty of dreams about playing FromSoftware games in a new location that's never existed before, and they always feel so magical because it's new FromSoftware, and Elden Ring felt exactly like that. New enemies, new weapons, new armor and environments, but that same old friend that is parrying, dodging, and dying. I loved playing the network test, and I actually got a decent amount done in the 8 or so hours I played it. I still didn't really leave the first area though, and if each area is that big with that much to do, it makes me think it's going to be a long ass game if you want to see everything. The non-linearity really encourages exploration, and there were dungeons and bosses in some weird places I didn't expect at all. My first hour or so was a harsh reminder that playing these games is a skill, and that you really do need to stay in practice to be good at them. I must have died to the very first enemy/boss, the Tree Sentinel, at least 30 or 40 times. It's a really cool enemy, and I feel like a lot of people probably just ran past him and came back later. But as soon as I'd had one try, I knew I needed to keep at it until I had him beat. Some bosses are just fucking dickheads when you first encounter them, but you need to be patient and learn their moveset to succeed. Even though I risked seeing absolutely nothing in my very limited 3-hour playtime window, I felt like giving up on that Tree Guardian bastard would be like giving up on the mindset that allowed me to be assholes like Medea and the Orphan, where you can't just run past them. I've only really got footage from that first few hours, but one thing I noticed over the entire length of my time with the game is that they've really heavily delayed all the enemy attacks. I didn't really notice it until recently, but it used to be so much easier to dodge enemies in Dark Souls 1. All you have to do is spam rolls and you'll almost certainly get out of the way. In Dark Souls 3, and even more so in Elden Ring, the attack combos of enemies seem to be delayed to the perfect amount, where dodging once is fine, but if you roll twice, you're going to get hit again on your recovery frames with no way to avoid damage. The delay I mentioned earlier is also a punch in the face, because it seems so much harder to dodge by reaction. Obviously I still have a lot of learning to do, but I dodged way too early throughout my time with the game, and ended up getting absolutely destroyed for it. It really feels like the changes are there to specifically increase the complexity and thoughtfulness of the gameplay, being difficult for newcomers, but similar to Sekiro, almost being more difficult for veterans who have to unlearn and then relearn their instincts. I find it very hard to believe that many of the proper bosses are going to be easily defeated on a first try, just because their moveset is so fucking delayed and annoying to specifically punish panic rolling and reaction-based rolling. You either learn their movesets, or you die. I can't really comment on a lot of the game, as I've not really had the time to understand it properly, but it feels like the subtle tweaks to the gameplay are for the better overall. I'm not sure if there are any OP game-breaking strats or moves, but with so many options it seems like there probably will be. I found Horseback Combat a little too easy to just run away from all the attacks, similar to how I foolishly played Sekiro at first, but I mostly fought from the ground. There's also a weird new attack that I didn't get footage of, where if you attack after a block you do a ridiculous amount of damage, similar to a riposte, which seemed totally overpowered on average enemies. I'm not sure about the open world, and I didn't interact with the crafting at all other than making a couple of throwing knives. It's too early to say just yet, but I really hope it's for the better overall. The crafting didn't really seem entirely necessary, and I hope it doesn't dilute the core of the game too much. As much as it's a staple of open world games, and it could have some interesting outcomes, I'd much rather spend my precious time in the demo out there exploring and fighting stuff, than sat interacting with menus. Other than the choices of what you want to craft, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of gameplay to the crafting process. Thankfully, it utilized the Breath of the Wild instant pickup of items with triangle, rather than the Red Dead Redemption 2 absolutely ridiculous bend down and very slowly pick up every single item. There is also at least one flask where you can mix together items to make it have various special effects, which I didn't get much use out of, but I can see it being a pretty interesting mechanic. They've experimented with items like Yesefka's blood vial before, and it's really great to see that it's rechargeable this time, similar to the gourds in Sekiro. I love how every time I play a new FromSoftware game, it feels like they've improved upon the little details from the previous games, and I think this and the interchangeable weapon arts are excellent changes to ideas from earlier games. Exploration is obviously the main draw of an open world, with the freedom to go anywhere, and I had a lot of fun moving from place to place. It does seem like it makes the game easier though, and as I said earlier, other than certain moments, it's very simple to just run away from a tough enemy if you want to. I think giving players choice is good, but it makes it really difficult for there to be a perfectly crafted section like Central Yharnam, when you can so easily go through any given area from multiple angles. There were a few dungeons I visited, which seemed to be mostly short caves and graves, but if these ramp up in size and complexity over time, we could be seeing a blend of open world and linear dungeon level design like something from a Zelda game. There were so many little weird secrets to discover, and it felt strange to be exploring in a FromSoftware game and finding all these random places where interesting things were hidden. I'm sure most people will find most of them, but I actually felt kind of special to discover Ordoviz's awesome armor and greatsword, and the cool samurai NPC Yura. The rewards might have mostly been pretty small, but I think the interesting areas and enemies and sights are all the real reward of exploration. Even though there is a consistent visual style, it feels like any moment you could turn a corner and run into some weird death-looking guy on a bridge, or a poisonous plant hiding in some ruins. One thing I really loved about the open world was the messages. I'm not sure if it's because the only people leaving them were really die-hard FromSoft fans, but the quality of the messages was amazing. Not only did they seem like hilarious references to other Dark Souls games, my best note at the end of my playthrough with 67 positive ratings was a note comparing the similarity of the grave tree routes to the Bed of Chaos, but they also felt so much more open than usual. In most Souls games, you get plenty of messages to warn of traps and that's great, but in the open world with its many hidden details, it feels like they have so much more power to point you towards amazing experiences because they're so much easier to miss. It really feels like the messages in these games were made for an open world. In fact, after getting cut off from fighting that death on the horse at the end of the first session, I went back there during the day and realized he was gone. I wondered if it had been a bug until I saw a note that suggested I wait until nighttime, and lo and behold, there he was, waiting to get an ass whooping. The lore of the game is shaping up to be super interesting too. I read every item I could get my hands on, and even though I haven't scratched the surface, let alone remembered any of the names of the factions involved, you can tell it's more of the same compelling narrative of earlier titles. I really like the story of Bloodborne, and I'm hoping the main content is going to revolve around a smaller kingdom, and the factions within that kingdom like Bloodborne, rather than the various lands, most of which we never get to see, like Dark Souls. It seems like it's leaning toward the latter, but all the signs of a great FromSoftware story are there. In Dark Souls, it's trees and fire and cycles and purpose and dragons and humanity. In Bloodborne, it's blood and babies and dreams and pregnancy and blind ambition and more babies. And in Elden Ring, I've so far seen a lot of trees and a lot of fingers and a lot of sunset on the water and a lot of humans turning into animals. The only thing I can actually remember without going back and looking is 2 fingers, and I'm not sure whether that's 2 people or 1 or a collective group, but they seem pretty high up there. Oh, and the Erd Tree seems important, and there's underground tomb things where it looks like they feed dead bodies to its roots. I'm looking forward to seeing what that's about. Also, there's bits of a floating temple shattered laying all around. I'm not sure how important that is. Maybe like fragmentation is a theme? I don't know, but I'm very much looking forward to finding it all out. Also, this next bit is fucked up and disgusting in case you're eating, but there's an octopus that feeds its ovaries with human blood. Sorry, I just thought that was so FromSoftware. The game is visually beautiful, and I was blown away by the amount of detail in the armor and weapons, and all the little effects, and the lighting and day and night cycle and weather system made the same area look completely different depending on when you were there. It ran pretty well on my PS4 with a seemingly stable frame rate, except for once or twice where it dropped to quite bad numbers for a couple of seconds. It didn't really affect my immersion, and it actually ran better than I expected considering, but I've decided I want to experience it as best I can, and so I'm going to get a PS5 in preparation for when it comes out. I'm not sure whether it feels like a next-gen experience or not, but I'd hate to feel like I was getting a second-rate version of the game. All the footage you've seen was captured on my PS4, and I honestly think it looks gorgeous, but that seems mostly down to the impeccable visual direction and art style, rather than the hardware of the system. Some of the armor and items seem maybe too detailed for base PS4 to make really pop, when they're so small, but it's still a joy to play and look at. I didn't play an insane amount of multiplayer, because when I only had 3 hours, I didn't fancy spending half of it waiting for one invasion, just to have the host fight a boss immediately. but what I did play was great. You're watching my first Elden Ring duel on screen now, and I was super impressed at how quickly I was summoned. There seems to be a shitload of items for invading and dueling and helping repel invaders, which I started the game with. I'm not sure whether that's how the main game will be, but they all seem to work at least decently, and it really feels like they've expanded and improved on the multiplayer. I did a decent amount of invasions in my third session, power stancing 2 greatswords, which I unfortunately didn't capture, but it went very smoothly, and as an invader, it's excellent to see that hosts still think they're invincible and chase you into groups of enemies when they have a summon. I'm really excited for the meta to develop and for the prime dueling and invasion spots to get figured out, and all the weird crazy glitches and overpowered combos and disrespectful emotes. God, there's so much potential energy there. The first few months of a FromSoftware game are always the best for PvP, and it's been almost 6 years of waiting. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that I really loved playing Elden Ring. As much as I felt guilty that I got to play it before everyone else, and as much as I tried to suppress my excitement in the wake of recent AAA disasters, every moment was accompanied by a kind of electric buzz, which was a mix of excited squeaking and physically shaking from being completely awestruck that I was actually playing fucking Elden Ring. The changes they've made seem fucking awesome, and I can't wait to spend all night invading people and pondering the lore when it comes out. Thank you to FromSoftware for making this beautiful, beautiful experience. Thank you to Yura for reminding me that there will be mad outfits and weapons. And thank you for watching. Cheers.